Hi guys, so welcome back to my channel. My name is Gajvik. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know it's been a couple months that I haven't uploaded. It's been a kind of a hectic, kind of crazy past few months, both with events and with my personal life. For those of you who are in the wedding industry, you guys know that spring, it starts to get kind of busy with weddings. So same thing here in Vegas. It is a little bit warmer. So I tend to get more events and a little more busy with DJing in general. So with that, let's get into my April events. Like I said, spring does get a little bit busier with wedding season. I do have weddings throughout the weekdays, just like this first one, which was the Broffies. It was on Tuesday, April 2nd. This wedding was at Wedgewood, and for those of you who are wondering, I'm one of the preferred vendors or preferred DJs to be there, so that's why I'm there very often. For this couple, it was a little bit difficult for me just because they were from the other side of the pond. It was a very small group. I want to say about maybe 15 guests. It was so small that they kind of even aligned their tables in a U shape instead of sweetheart table and 3 or 4 other tables. So I was in charge of the ceremony, cocktail, dinner, and obviously all of the reception. They had a couple of formalities, not a lot of them. Grand entrance into first dance. We had dinner, and then from there we had the family dances. So after formalities, I did open up the dance floor, and I wasn't really sure what they kind of wanted to dance to or, just listen to. On their paperwork, they did have that they liked a lot of funk, a lot of 50s, 60s, 80s. And then halfway through, the bride came up to me and said, "Hey, we have a surprise for the guests. My dad and uncle are dressed up as Elvis." They obviously had a kind of routine is what I thought they had ready, but they did. It was more just like joking around and just flopping around as Elvis. Yeah, that was it for Mr. and Mrs. Broffi's wedding. So my next event was on Friday, April 5th for Mrs. and Mrs. Arroyo. Now for this couple, the brides were very particular in what they wanted. From the get-go, when I received their packet, they were just very adamant about making sure that I knew how to play Spanish music because that's what they really wanted. It was cumbias, it was merengue, reggaeton, some quebraditas, some hip-hop and pop, but it was mostly Latin-based. So my next event was on Sunday, April 7th, back at Wedgewood for Mr. and Mrs. Winkleman. It was more than 100 people party, and for those that are a bigger party, it's easier in a sense to get people to dance just because, if you throw something out there, it's more likely to catch. But for this one, it was a combination of kind of like pop, top 40s, and some Latin. So my next event was at Havana Old Cigar Lounge. My buddy Mike had his own night to run, which was that Wicked Wednesday is what he called it. It's on Las Vegas Boulevard. It's really, really actually close to where they do the Pawn Star show. Gold and silver, right? Pawn Stars or Pawn Shop, whatever. If you guys are ever in Vegas, if you guys want to stop by, it's like right there on Wednesdays. He kind of want to make an open format, just giving DJs kind of just a little chance to DJ. So I for sure threw a set. It was more of a like Blue Moon set. So kind of like EDM-ish, some Mubaton, some Jersey Club is what I played. The DJs that were there for sure was Kid Hybrid or Mike, DJ Bolam, Hardcore, DJ Jamal, and then there was another closing DJ, which I want to say wasn't able to make it. It was more of casual, having drinks and just inviting people over for this event. That's all it really was. So that following Friday, April 12th, I was back at Wedgewood for Mr. and Mrs. Baker's wedding. That day, it was a little bit windy. It was a little bit rough with the microphone. One of the things I do like about using outboard gear is that most of the outboard mixers have a graphic EQ, so you're able to EQ. For things like this, when it's windy, I always like to EQ out the lows. It would kind of be like a high-pass filter, kind of like this. Now for this one, the ring bearer was wheeling the flower girl in a little white wagon. It looks like it was made. I was trying to look at it. I don't know if they make wagons like that. We had regular events here, grand entrance, first dance, groom and daughter, the bride, and then daughters. So she danced with all of her daughters. After the dances and we went to cake cutting, the bride and groom went over to the cake. Now, that same daughter came up to me and said, "Can you play this song?" and announced that it is for the bride and her mom who had passed away. I wrote down everything she told me. Wrote down the name of the song. So I was like, okay, cool. And she's like, yeah, it's a surprise, just do it. And I was like, okay, sounds good. She kind of walked away. At that point in time, the bride and the groom were going back to the sweetheart table. So I just zoomed straight to the bride and I just went up to her and I was like, hey, so your daughter wanted me to do this, and I showed her, wants me to play this song in memory of you and your mom. And she said, absolutely not. I was like, okay, cool, we're gonna continue. It could be a lesson for you guys. I really don't like surprises for the bride, but I always like to either ask the bride or the groom, or if it's a surprise for the bride, I'll ask the groom, or if it's a surprise for the groom, I'll ask the bride. Unless obviously the bride is doing a surprise for the groom and the groom is doing a surprise for the bride. And that's where I just obviously don't even mention it. So the next day, I was still at Wedgewood, except I was on the other side. I was at the sunrise and patio side. It was for the Kernaziks. It was still windy. The system on that side did not have a graphic EQ. It was a parametric EQ, so I just brought down the lows and what I could from there. It was for sure windier than the day before. But I mean, at that point, everyone understands that, you know, you're gonna hear wind noise in the microphone if it's that windy. So for this one, it was a lot of Latin songs and then for sure pop. The groom really loved that heavy, like the 2010s hip hop. So for my next event, this was a personal booking. It was, you know, using my own equipment. I had to DJ at this apartment complex. They have a little clubhouse where they have events and stuff like that. So I did DJ there. They were having kind of like a salsa night. So they did have instructors. I was only contracted there, I want to say, for 2 or 3 hours. So playing background music, a lot of Latin salsa. And then the instructors kind of jumped in, and then they had like a small routine that they kind of taught any guests that were from that apartment complex.
So that's your forward and back basics.
The following day, I was back at Wedgewood for Mr. and Mrs. Rapp's wedding. Nothing really out of the ordinary out of this wedding. One thing I will say is that the fact that the bride danced the whole night. And that's one of the things that I will say, that if the bride and groom are not on the dance floor dancing or having fun, a lot of the guests, most of the time, I don't want to say all the time, but most of the time, are just sitting down or at the bar or wherever the bride and groom is at. If the bride and groom are at the dance floor, they're dancing the night away, everyone joins them. And with that, I will tell you that the bride was on the dance floor for sure, like 90%, 80% of the time, and her guests were with her. All right, so this weekend was a busy weekend just because the next day I was back at Wedgewood. He was Persian and she was Polish. They did send me an extensive playlist, and that's one of the things I did let them know right off the bat. I'm not a Persian DJ, I'm not a Polish DJ, so I don't really know any of these songs. I don't even know the language, so I could be playing something that could just be cussing straight up and I have no idea, or it could be talking about certain things that are not appropriate and I have no idea. And I'm just going to do the best of my abilities to play what you gave me. The bride and groom decides not to get their own DJ. They decide to just stay with the DJ that's in-house. That's one of the things that you do kind of encounter, is situations like this where you don't know the music, right? It just happens. There was a thing that they did for cake. It was a tradition where there was a little girl that would dance with the knife. The groom would have to go up to her and pay her, and then the little girl would decide whether or not that was enough. And if it was, you know, she would give the knife to him. If it wasn't, she'd just keep on dancing. So it was just like that. It's a little tradition that they had. After she decided it was enough, then he grabbed the knife, and then the bride and groom went over to the cake and cut the cake. So that was all my weddings and events for April. I do have my residency at the Garden, which is located at the Arts District by like near downtown Las Vegas. Aside from these events, I was there every Thursday in April. The one week we do have the regular Taste Thursday, which is kind of like a variety show. We do have singers, pole performances, some dances, some routines. Now the other weeks we do have Taste Sirens, which is a drag show that alternate with Taste Thursday. So one week is Taste Thursday, and then the week after is Taste Siren. I'm there opening up the night, make sure that the show runs well, and then afterwards I do play to try to keep the crowd from leaving and kind of just entertain them until the end of the night. And aside from that, that's pretty much it for all my events of April. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me down in the comments. I know I've been lagging this last few months, but I will for sure be back on it. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys on the next one. Gajvik out.